I mentioned, we will have a question and answer. I've just realized I forgot to hit record, so I'm going to do that now.
I just did it, Natasha.
Oh, thank you. My apologies, Bahar.
No worries.
All right, well, thank you. We were a little late starting the recording, but we've just started off with a land acknowledgement, so we do want to recognize that we are, many of us are settlers here on the indigenous land of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, and Inuit of this province. And so we are getting started now to provide this presentation to our new international students related to immigration. So things you need to know being a study permit holder and what you need to do to maintain compliance with the conditions of your stay in Canada. And so we're going to go through a presentation, and at the end of the presentation, for those who are attending live, they can certainly ask a question. So we do kindly ask that you save your questions till the end of the presentation. And we're going to take questions not in the chat panel, but in the Q&A. So there is a Q&A, I believe, here in this WebEx option, and you'll see a little ellipsis there to be able to pose those questions. And we'll read the questions at the end and answer them by an advisor. All right, so now we'll start off by way of introductions. As I mentioned, today's session is being presented by our Immigration Advising Team, which is based out of the Internationalization Office. And the Immigration Advising Team is composed of regulated immigration consultants. So each one of us is designated to be able to provide immigration advice in Canada. You can see our names there. You can see, the designation, RCIA or RCIC. So these are regulated immigration advisors and consultants. And we are the team here to help answer any immigration questions you have. So I'll provide a little brief introduction of myself. So my name is Natasha Clark. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a settler in Canada. I am an international student advisor at Memorial, and my primary area of focus is to provide immigration advice, but also I manage the health insurance. So if anybody attended yesterday's session, that you heard me talk there as well. I've been working at Memorial University for a very long time. I've been doing this for about 15, 18 years in terms of supporting students on their study permits and their immigration journey. So I'm so delighted. Many semesters we welcome new students, and we're really just so happy to have you here. So I'm going to hand it off to Arif, who will provide an introduction.
Thank you. My name is Arif Abu. I am an international student advisor for immigration and inclusion. I am in Memorial since 2018, but prior to that, I have worked for 5 Canadian universities all around the country. So you can tell that, I have lived experience in many provinces in Canada, and I can tell you not only about immigration and inclusion, but also weather situation in different parts of this land. I I'm really delighted that you joined Memorial, and I'm really looking forward to working with you as you walk through your journey from a new student now to a graduate, which may look very far from now, but it's actually not that far. So I will pass it on to Panis.
Thank you, and hello everyone. My name is Panis. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a licensed immigration advisor helping students with their temporary status in Canada, which is the students and all the permits and policies around that. I'm a migrant settler and former international student. Have over 10 years of experience at the post-secondary institutions, and recently joined MUN in this summer, last summer, it's already passed. And basically, I wish you a successful year and journey, life in Canada, and look forward to see you soon. And thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And just a reminder, I did hear a bit of background noise, so I want to ask everyone to ensure that their microphone is muted. Perfect. So we're going to go over a lot of information in today's session. And so by the end of the session, what we would really like our participants to be able to take away is to be able to describe the difference between a visa, an electronic travel authorization, a study permit, and to talk about the importance of your passport. It's really important to have an understanding of how in your enrollment status at Memorial, so whether you're a full-time, part-time student, in what particular semesters, how that's going to impact your eligibility to work and study. And in order to understand that, you also have to have an appreciation of some key terms for immigration purposes. So what we mean by full-time and part-time and breaks in your study. We expect participants to be able to describe their eligibility criteria for a co-op work permit, as well as to discuss what it means to be eligible for a post-grad work permit. And also, very importantly, we want you to know where are good sources of information to get immigration related information. And we want you to be able to identify a way that you can connect with one of us within the immigration advising team, because we're not here just for this information session at the start of your studies, but also throughout your journey, as Arif mentioned, as a student at Memorial. So the first thing we want to talk about is, in terms of the important documents you have, is your passport. So of course you would have a passport that would be issued from your country of citizenship. This passport would have been needed to be able to apply for a study permit or to travel to Canada. So it remains a very important document for you while you are here as a student in Canada. Your passport hopefully is valid for the duration of your studies here in Canada, but it might not be, right? It is possible that it's set to expire partway through your studies. And if that is the case, then you need to know that expiry date and take action prior to it expiring to be able to extend that passport. And this is not Canadian immigration regulations, right? Each country is different in terms of their policies and procedures for renewing passport. So it's not something that we can provide direct advice on, but we can certainly, direct you, I guess, on where to go to get that information. Your country may have a representative here in Canada. So there may be an embassy or a consulate or a high commission here in Canada. And if there is, then part of their role is to serve you as a citizen of that country, as somebody who is in Canada. And many of them will have information on their website through their offices where you can contact about ways to get your passport extended. So it is sometimes possible to do that from inside of Canada through that your country's representative in Canada, or some students, if they plan a trip home at some point during their studies, will go through the process to renew the passport when they are back home. Now, your passport is one very important document that allows you to travel to Canada. Another may be this visa. So this is a picture of a Canadian visa. Its proper name is a temporary resident visa, or TRV. You might hear us call it an entry visa, but basically its purpose is to allow you to seek entry to Canada. And many of our students will require this visa in order to come to Canada. Whether or not you need the visa depends primarily on your country of citizenship. So what country issued your passport. If you are from what's known as a visa requiring country, you would need a visa to enter Canada. If you're from a non-visa requiring country, then instead you would have something called an electronic travel authorization, or an ETA, unless you're a citizen of the US. Okay, and an ETA, we can't show you because it's not a physical document. It is an electronic document that's electronically linked to your passport. But if you did apply for a study permit to come to Canada and you're from a non-visa requiring country, then you should have been issued an ETA along with your study permit approval. But you can certainly check the validity of that ETA if you're from a non-visa requiring country through the IRCC website. So there's a way to check to make sure, based on your passport information, if you have a valid ETA. Now, if you're from a visa requiring country, like I would say the majority of our international students are, then you will see what looks like this picture here in your passport. So this is a counterfoil or a sticker that is affixed to your passport. And you didn't have to apply for this separately. So if you applied for a study permit to come to Canada, at some point during the process, you would have been requested to submit your passport if you're from a visa requiring country. And when they issue, the reason they ask for the passport is to be able to put this visa in it. So you then would have gotten the passport back and you would see this here. So it would have a date of issue and it would have an expiry date, as you see kind of in the top right hand corner. And typically it would be a multiple entry visa, which you can see here on the second line there that says multiple. And this essentially means that you have authorization to request entry to Canada multiple times throughout the duration of this visa. Okay. And often the visa will be valid typically for the length of your program or however long they're going to issue you your study permit, or to the length of your passport. Okay. So this document is important if you need it to get here initially, but then even after you're here, if you want to travel outside of Canada, you're going to need to ensure that you have a valid visa to enter Canada. Now, there is one exception to that rule, and that's if you are in Canada and you make a visit to the continental US, or you go to the small French island off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador, St. Pierre and Miquelon. If you travel directly to one of those places and then back to Canada, you actually are allowed to enter Canada on just a valid study permit. You don't need a valid visa, but for most other all other international travel, you would need to have that valid visa. So it's okay to be here in Canada with an expired visa, but if you need to travel and re-enter, you need to ensure that you do have a valid visa to come back. Or if you're from a non-visa requiring country, you're going to need to have that valid ETA. All right, so that's the first bit of information. I'm going to hand it over now to Arif, so we're going to test your knowledge.
Aha, this is my favorite part. So I don't know about you, but I love FIFA. I mean, I'm not big into sports, I must admit, but I love FIFA. As a child, I've always watched it, even now as an adult, if I may call. I love watching it. So we will do it FIFA style. So the way it will happen, I will read a statement and you have to say true and false in the chat box. But you will also have to say from which country you are. Whoever answers that first, that country gets the point. So for example, if I was asking a question and Panis replies and says, Panis says true and Iran, then Iran gets the point, right? So you are not only playing for yourself, you're also playing for your country. So buckle up. And then again, remember, there is no red card, but there is yellow card, right? So if you answer the question before I finish my statement, you get a yellow card, right? And then it doesn't work out for you. It's not a goal, okay? So let's start. Visa is an official counterfoil document issued by a visa office abroad that is placed in a person's passport to show that he or she or they has met the requirements for admission to Canada as a temporary resident, a visitor, student, or worker. I see. True. Yes, it's true. It's true. And the first one goes to Nigeria. Nigeria, warning. You replied, I saw it. You replied before I finished it. Okay. So Nigeria, warning, but I will give you the first goal because it's the first try. Okay. So Nigeria 1, rest of the world 0. Next one. You can enter Canada with an expired TRV. True or false? You have to tell your country. Yes, it's false. I see a lot of people have said before, but JC is killing it. It's Nigeria, false. So Nigeria 2, and JC has goal twice. So possibly will be the person of the match too. Now next one, and it's false. But one thing though, you can expire with your expired TRV in Canada if you have a valid study permit and you went to USA with valid US visa and coming back without visiting a third country. So if you have a valid study permit and you went to USA with a valid US visa and then you're returning without visiting anywhere else, just directly coming back from the USA, then you can enter without expired TRV. Next one, number 3, visa authorizes international students to work on or off campus. False, Nigeria, true, false. Yes, it is false. Visa does not authorize international students to work on or off campus. Um, it authorizes to only to enter Canada. It's your study permit that authorizes you to work on or off campus. And I know the right answer is also went to Nigeria. Nigeria 3, rest of the world is 0. And I believe it's Maniola who scored the goal this time. So people, Nigeria is killing it. Nigeria is killing it. What happened to my Brazilian and Argentinians? Like, let's do something here. Last one is visa can be renewed from within Canada. It is true, but this time I will show a yellow card to Nigeria because you answered before I finished my sentence. So this goes to Mexico. So Nigeria 3, Mexico 1, and for this match, Jesse is the person of the match.
Perfect. Yeah, I always realize when there's a question that I didn't cover. So I didn't talk about how your visa can be renewed from within Canada, but many of you knew that already. So hopefully your visa is valid for the length that you're going to study here. But if it's not, and then you have to extend your study permit. Once you've done that, you can also apply for a new visa from inside Canada if you're here on a valid study permit. And so that would be advisable if you had plans to travel, because you certainly will need it to re-enter Canada in most cases, or some students will want to just maintain a valid visa in case something happens and they need to return home. Then at least they have that assurance that they have the correct authorization to come back into Canada. And helping you and advising you, guiding you on how to apply for that visa is part of what we do. So we'll have information sessions. We can meet with students one-on-one, go over applications. So it's important to have that basic knowledge to begin. So now we're going to talk about your study permit. So your visa really only authorizes you to enter Canada. If you are coming here to study at Memorial as an exchange student for 1 semester, it is possible that you did not apply for a study permit. But if you're from a visa requiring country, then you would have applied for the visa. And so if you are coming in, say, as an exchange student for 1 semester and you only have the visa, that visa authorizes you to stay in Canada essentially as a visitor up to 6 months. So you have 6 months that you could stay in Canada if you come on just the visa. And as an exchange student for 1 semester, because your program of study here in Canada is less than 6 months and can be completed in the time you're authorized to be in Canada, you actually are part of a study permit exemption. So you don't need the study permit to study, but you can't work, right? So some exchange students for 1 semester may have applied for a study permit anyway. There is that exemption for a 1 semester exchange, but you may have perhaps applied for it anyway. And so for anybody, and everybody else certainly, right, would need a study permit because there's very few exemptions to being able to study in Canada without this study permit. And the study permit is what authorizes you to study. So this is what the study permit looks like. And if you're a first-time study permit holder, you likely applied for that study permit outside of Canada through a visa office abroad. And if your study permit was approved, you didn't get that study permit outside of Canada, but you would have received your approval for that study permit before traveling to Canada. So if anybody hasn't arrived yet in Canada, you don't want to travel until you have that approval. And that approval for your study permit is also called a LOI, or a letter of introduction. And you present that LOI to the border officer at your first Canadian port of entry. So when you go through Border and Customs Services in Canada, you will present that study permit approval, or LOI, and it is at your port of entry, your first Canadian port of entry, that your study permit is actually printed. And so when it gets printed, this is what it will look like. Okay, so you'll see your personal details there. It will have a date of issue, it will have an expiry date, and there will be some conditions listed there on your study permit. Typically, your expiry date hopefully will be for the length of your studies plus 90 days. They don't issue study permits generally past the validity of your passport, but they do try to give you your study permit for the length of your program plus 90 days, unless they have to give it shorter. So you never really know for sure what your expiry of your study permit is going to be until it is issued to you at the port of entry. So it's important to make note of that. And if you end up not completing your program prior to that date, you're certainly going to need to extend that study permit. Again, something else that we can assist you with. And there is this section here on the study permit in the bottom half. One says conditions, the other says remarks. It's really important to have a look at those conditions to understand what the conditions are that are placed there. And most study permits will have this condition: may accept employment on or off campus at the institution at which they're a registered student, or if meeting the eligibility criteria, and it references essentially a section of the immigration regulations. And we'll talk later on in the presentation about what the work authorization means, what makes you eligible to work, and what your work hour restrictions are, because it's really important that you abide by these conditions as they're written on your study permit. Other conditions you might see: some individuals may be restricted from working in certain fields, like in healthcare, with children, with the elderly. And that often has to do with if you had to undergo a medical exam prior to come to Canada. So it's important that you see what conditions are there. You don't want to later on apply for a job, perhaps as a home care support worker, when you have a condition that says you can't, right, work in those areas. And it will often say that this does not authorize reentry, and that's true, because the study permit is what authorizes you to study in Canada, right? It doesn't allow you to reenter Canada, except for that one exception with a travel to the US. And it may have other remarks or conditions. So when it's issued to you at the port of entry, we would just advise you to have a look through it. If you have questions, or also do you want to make sure that everything is correct, your name is printed correctly, your date of birth, and that sort of thing, so that you may have an opportunity to bring that up to the officer who provided it to you there at the port of entry. Okay, so we will talk more about the work authorization and what you need to know about your study permit a little later on. But first of all, I'll hand it over to Arif.
Okay, ready? Okay. So first one, don't get any yellow card. That's the worst way too. Okay. I know all of you have typed the answer already and just waiting for the click, but okay. Study permits allows you to enter Canada. True Zimbabwe, false Mexico, false Nigeria. It is a false, and the vote goes to Mexico. Study permit does not allow you to enter Canada. It's the visa or ETA that allows you to enter Canada. Okay. So Mexico won, and everybody else is 0. Next one, study permit authorizes you to Ghana. What's going on here? You're losing the game. Yellow card, yellow card, yellow card, and Bangladesh yellow card. So study permit authorizes you to work if you meet the conditions. True, and Mexico gold it again. So Mexico 2, everybody too eager, 0. Final. Study permits cannot be renewed from within Canada. False. Yes. Zimbabwe scored their first goal. Yeah. Study permit cannot be renewed within Canada. It is actually false. Yes. Study permit can be renewed from within Canada, right? So yes, the Mexico 2 and Zimbabwe 1. Zimbabwe has scored their first goal. I'm super happy. Zimbabwe is a special country for me because one of our dear friend Danai is from Zimbabwe, who used to be the immigration advisor here, but working somewhere else now. Now I'll pass it on to Panisa or Natasha.
It's still me.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, so something I didn't talk about. Yes, of course, hopefully your study permit is given to you for the length of your studies, but if not, you have to apply to extend it prior to expiry. And again, that's something we can help you with. All right. So before we get into a conversation of what your study permit, what the conditions mean in more detail, it's important to have a good understanding of some key terms, right? Some academic terms primarily, and how they kind of intersect with your immigration status, because you're here on a study permit. The purpose is to study, and so everything is kind of based around you being a student. So the first key term we want to go over is an academic year. So at Memorial University, an academic year runs from September to August. So it's different than the calendar year. An academic year will have 3 semesters. So we start with the fall semester, which runs from September to December. Then we have the winter semester, which runs from January until April. And finally, we have the spring semester, which runs from May until August. And during that May to August period, we have the spring semester, but we also have these 2 sessions. So they're kind of like a semester sped up and split in 2. So we have an intersession in May and June and a summer session in July and August. Okay, so we do offer courses and we have semesters throughout the entire year. To be a full-time student or to have full-time status, what that means differs depending on your level of study. So if you are an undergraduate student, so pursuing like a bachelor's program or an undergraduate diploma or certificate, then a full-time status is defined as a minimum of 9 credit hours in a semester or 5 credit hours in a session. So 9 credit hours is the minimum to be a full-time student as an undergraduate. Each course is assigned a certain number of credit hours. Typically, each undergraduate course is 3 credit hours. Okay, but not always. Some courses might have a different credit hour assigned to them. So most courses are 3 credit hours at the undergraduate level, and 9 credit hours is the minimum to be a full-time student, which means typically is 3 courses in a semester at a minimum that you have to be enrolled in to be a full-time student. Now, the majority of undergraduate programs at Memorial, have a duration of about 4 years. Some are 5 or 6. And the way they arrive at that 4 years is typically you would take 5 courses or 15 credit hours in the fall, 5 courses or 15 credit hours in the winter, and then nothing in the spring, unless you have a schedule, a very structured program. Okay. So taking 3 courses may make you a full-time student, but if you're only taking 3 courses in the fall and the winter, you're not finishing the program within that 4-year time frame. Okay, so it's important to make that distinction. So that's what full-time status means for an undergraduate student. For a graduate student, full-time status is defined differently. Full-time status for a graduate student is not based on the number of courses you take. It's based on how you're pursuing your program. So if you're pursuing your program on a full-time basis, you're paying full-time tuition fees, right? As opposed to applying to do it on a part-time and paying part-time tuition fees. The formal definition of a full-time graduate student is one who works no more than 24 hours a week. So it's not at all based on the number of courses you take. It's based on your ability to devote the majority of your time, your full time, most of your attention to your graduate studies and scholarship. Okay, and that 24-hour week definition of work applies to all graduate students. That's the definition of full time, and anything and then the definition of part-time would be somebody who's pursuing it on a part-time basis, and then is doing that because they're likely full-time employees. A scheduled break is a break that is scheduled by the institution. So it's however your program is mapped out. As I mentioned, for undergraduate programs, a lot of them, if they're a 4-year program, are designed to be 4 years because it's designed that you take, 10 courses a year, you do 5 in the fall, 5 in the winter, and then you take none in the spring. It's a scheduled break for your program. And that's the case for many of our undergraduate programs, except for some that are often competitive entry and then are very structured programs, whereby the spring may have a requirement to take courses. And many of those structured programs are structured because they have work integrated learning components. So it could be study term, work term, study term. So for most of our undergraduate programs, spring is an optional semester or a scheduled break based on how that program is designed. And other scheduled break for our undergraduate programs also include the time in between semesters, because you'll note that this semester will end in December. I'm not sure the exact date, and our next one will begin in January. So there's a couple of weeks there that would be a scheduled break. And for in the middle of the semester, there's often a midterm break or a reading week, and that would be a scheduled break. Those are scheduled breaks for our undergraduate students. Okay. Our graduate students have no scheduled breaks, regardless of the graduate program that they're enrolling in. And the reason is because you are enrolled in your graduate program, and that registration just rolls over every semester. Okay. So you're meant to always be focused in providing your full attention to your studies. So there is no schedule break for graduate programs. All right. It's really important to know what your schedule breaks are and to understand that they're not breaks that you can choose to take, right? They're based on how that program is designed. The fifth thing here is a leave of absence. Leave of absences essentially mean you're taking a gap or a break from your studies. And there are situations where a leave of absence can be an approved leave, and then there's also leave of absences that are not approved or not authorized. Okay. At the graduate level, because you maintain continuous enrollment in your program, if you need to take time away from your studies, you have to make an application to take a leave of absence from your program. Okay, and you can do that through the School of Graduate Studies. If you're an undergraduate student, for most programs, there is no an approved leave, so you don't have to apply for it. Some programs there may be, particularly programs that are very structured, because you have to take certain courses in a semester. So you'd have to request the leave to be able to rejoin the program at a certain time. But for most undergraduate students, there is no approved leave. If you don't register, you maintain your eligibility to register for several consecutive semesters before having to reapply for admission. So if you're absent for 3 semesters, so a year, you'd have to reapply for admission as an undergraduate student. Okay. Now, leave of absences or taking any break or gap from your study can have some serious impacts on your study permit and your status as a student in Canada. And after this, Penise is going to go over some of that information and why that's the case. Because you have the study permit that requires that you be a student. And so they expect you essentially to do the program as it's laid out. So it's important to be a full-time student in order to complete the program in the time that it's designed to be completed, and to demonstrate that you are a genuine student, that you're making reasonable progress towards your program. Okay, so it's important to know what leave of absence means, but if it's something that you are considering or something that you have to do as part of your studies, it is vital that you speak to an immigration advisor to be able to understand what potential impacts that can have on you, right? You don't want to do something and get yourself in trouble through violating the Immigration Act, essentially. The last thing here is an academic suspension. And an academic suspension is a type of approved leave. It's where you're required essentially to withdraw, or you're suspended for a certain period of time from enrolling in your studies. So if this can happen because of poor academic performance or from academic misconduct. And so it's very serious if this happens, as it can also impact, again, your immigration status and that sort of thing. So it's also very important that if you find yourself in that situation, that you connect with an advisor who can tell you about the immigration impacts, but also maybe potential options for appeals and that sort of thing. Okay. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Penise.
Thank you, Natasha. Can everybody hear me? Just want to make sure because I don't trust the technology. All good?
You're loud and clear.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so we would like to bring your attention to a couple of things about your study permit. One thing is that do not let your study permit to expire, and your study permit expiry date, it is mentioned on the study permit. I think Natasha very well went through all of those details, and I would say remember that, like your date of birth, so that you know when your study permit expires, so you can take action about it. So if you find yourself in a case that your studies basically go beyond that expiry date, or you're applying for postgrad work permit, you need to be in status in order to apply for postgrad work permit and so on, then you need to apply for the extension of the study permit before it expires. We do recommend basically applying 6 months prior. You know, the processing time, it is lengthy. And it always depends on the situation at the same time as well. It's not like always one prescription we give to everybody, because sometimes maybe the passport of the student is not ready. So we are not talking about those situations, but as a general guideline, you know, just have that in mind to apply for extension well ahead of time. Once you apply for the extension, and for that extension, you do require a letter from school to say that you're enrolled, and the expected completion of your program is this time, for example, because the officer will extend the study permit based on that letter from a school. And in that case, you know, you apply online, you provide the necessary documents, including that letter, and you will be on their maintained status. So once you apply for study permit extension, you will be under maintained status, and you know, maybe your study permit expire, maybe that processing time of a study permit goes beyond that time, but under maintained status, you would be able to continue to study and work if you had the condition allowing you to work until you hear back from Immigration Canada. And out of status means that you forgot to apply for extension, and you are still in Canada, but your study permit expired. That case is called out of status, meaning that your student status is expired. And it's you don't want to be in that situation, because that means you're not able to study, and you will not be able to work based on those conditions. So anything about the student status is not applicable to you anymore, because you're out of status until you apply for restoration of your status and get a new study permit. During the time that this request is getting processed, you're not able to go to school, you're not able to work, you're just waiting, and you need to apply for restoration of status within 90 days of your study permit expiry date. So I hope nobody really gets to that point. So please pay attention to the expiry date of your study permit, and do apply for extension of the study permit if your studies go beyond that. And note on the side, that's fine, but note on the side that if you know, your study permit, if you finish your program, you don't have future plans to study, regardless of that expiry date on your study permit, your study permit becomes invalid after 90 days of completing your program. So that's note on the side for future when you're planning to graduate. Thank you. The other thing about study permits is that Immigration Canada would like students to actively pursue your studies. Natasha did talk about this, meaning that you are expected to go with the natural progression of your program, to get registered and be here to study and actively pursue that. There are things that are happening in life, and we understand, Immigration Canada understands that. So it could be family matters or health. And as Natasha mentioned, you need to talk about it with your department to see if you can get authorization for the leave, or it could be not be authorized because the department doesn't have that process, or your reason is not valid. Either of those, it is something that you need to be aware of the policies around that. So first of all, whether it is authorized or not, you're not able to work. And if you stay in Canada, to have that in mind, authorized leave, or that any leave basically only up to 150 days, you could be out of school. So be mindful, because then in the future for postgrad work permit, those stuff would be as part of the criteria for the postgrad work permit, that we need to be aware and perhaps address it as part of your postgrad work permit application. I'm going to talk about postgrad work permit in the future slides. And about the condition of your study permit, Natasha did touch base on that, that you just read your conditions, and maybe they're talking about basically the work authorization, whether you have that or not, or if you're you're limited to not working in certain fields due to medical reason or so. So be aware of those, and if you have any question on it, if it's not clear, please ask us. And number 4 is about study permit and work authorization. So study permit may authorize you to work, but you must meet all of these conditions. And in order to work, you must be a full-time student. So students, when you guys arrive and receive your study permit at the border, one thing that we tried to get the message out was that even though that condition is allowing you to work, before school starts, you're not able to work. That is not written on your study permit, right? But this is the policy that comes with study permits and having a work permit attached to it, basically. And that's the other thing, you must keep that full-time status if you're willing to work off campus, on campus, basically work authorization. And Natasha talked about basically the hours that you're limited to work based on Immigration Canada, as well as Memorial University policies. You're limited to 20 hours a week off campus. So if you're a registered full-time student, you would be limited to 20 hours off campus. And during schedule break, so if it's applicable to you, let's say you're undergrad student and spring is part of the break of your program, you were a full-time student before and after this break. So that is another condition. So if the spring is a scheduled break, you must be full-time in the winter as well as the fall semester that is coming, in order to be able to work full-time during this schedule break. And graduate student, Natasha mentioned, they don't have the schedule break. And the other thing is, if you, for any reason, you were part-time, basically you won't have that work authorization because you're not full-time. And the only time that Immigration Canada says that you would be able to work based on your study permit and part-time registration is that if you maintain full-time status, and for the very last term, you were part-time in order to finish your program, that's the only time that it would be okay for postgrad work permit purposes, as well as your work authorization would be still applicable. And you must have the social insurance number. So if you haven't obtained that yet, you can do so by visiting Service Canada. The other thing I want to mention is that SIN number is not work authorization. I see or I hear from students that yes, I do have my SIN number. So work authorization is not just your SIN number. SIN number is just social insurance number that is you provide to your employer. And having that without, let's say you're not full-time registered, doesn't mean you can't work. So just be mindful about that, please. And then back to Arif.
Thank you, Panise. So I see that a lot of you are putting questions in the chat box. We'll recommend that you hold on to that those questions, and when we come back for the Q&A session, then you ask those questions and observations. Okay. So now quiz number 3, true and false. Be ready. First one. Undergraduate students can work full-time during their scheduled break. True. Yeah, Mexico, correct. It's true. Undergraduate students can work full-time during their scheduled break. So Mexico, 1. Graduate students do not have any scheduled break and as a result cannot work more than 20 hours off campus during their program of study. True or false? Miriam, excellent. It's true. Graduate students do not have any scheduled break and as a result you cannot work more than 20 hours off campus during your program of study. Now, you will see that, university will say that graduate students can work maximum 24 hours. That regulation is for all graduate students, international or domestic students. But that 24 hours is on and off campus combined, out of which maximum 20 hours can be done off campus for international students, right? Because of the immigration regulations. Immigration does not regulate how many hours you work on campus, but university does. Next one, part-time students are eligible to work. True or false? Zimbabwe, yes, Zimbabwe got the correct answer. Part-time students, no, Zimbabwe said false. Yes, Zimbabwe says false. Part-time students are not eligible to work. So Zimbabwe scored it because they said it's a false statement. It is absolutely a false statement. Now, final question or the final statement rather. And I'm watching. If you click the send button before I finish, you get a yellow card. Students who are on leave, authorized or unauthorized, are not eligible to work on and off campus. True or false? Nigeria says true, true, true. There's some true from Greenland, true from Bangladesh. Yeah, students who are on leave, authorized or unauthorized, are not eligible to work on an off campus, and that is true. So this one goes to Nigeria. So if I'm correct, it's Mexico 2, Zimbabwe 1, and Nigeria 1. So this match goes to Mexico.
Congratulations to all the winners. Okay, so co-op work permit. So this may not be applicable to everyone. So just so you know, if your program includes a work experience, such as co-op, internship, externship, placement, so it depends on the nature of the program, and this is part of your program. So it has to be a mandatory part in order to graduate from the program. Then you need to have a co-op work permit. So some of you may have applied if that was, if your program was like that and you had a co-op component, maybe you have applied for a co-op work permit outside of Canada along with your study permit and you have received it at the border. And on top of it, it doesn't say co-op work permit. On top of the permit just says work permit. So just so you know, if you're carrying two documents right now, one says the study permit and one says work permit, then that work permit, it is a co-op work permit. And the study permit that comes with working conditions is basically separate than the other one. And if, let's say, you do have that, cooperative education as part of your program, and then you didn't apply outside of Canada, in that case, you need to apply inside of Canada, and you just apply online, and you do need a letter from your department which says you're enrolled, and this co-op is a mandatory part of your program, and you are required to upload that on the application, online application that you're creating. Another point is that your status in Canada is a student, hence the study permit and the expiry date of the study permit is everything you need to pay attention to, and other documents that is issued would be based on that, meaning that when you're requesting a co-op work permit, the length of that co-op work permit would be issued to the length of the study permit. That's you. So, just to conclude, you do need a valid study permit in order to get a co-op work permit. And it is free of charge, and the application fee, you don't pay anything for that. And then I think I covered this. The only thing I think was about certain students that they are exempt and they don't need the co-op work permit until December, on the end of December. But that was if your study permit application was received before October 7, 2022, and then you were part of that public policy. So if anybody's here that their study permit was received before October 7, 2022, we can talk about whether they need co-op work permit for this term only, of which I don't think that would be anybody's case. If you're starting this term, you don't start with a co-op term. And Arif, I think that's the quiz after that.
Excellent. So the first statement: to obtain co-op work permit, you must be in a program where co-op is a mandatory part of the studies. Nigeria says true. Joanna says true. And that is true. To obtain a co-op work permit, you must be in a program where a co-op is a mandatory part of your studies. So this one goes to Jesse from Nigeria. The application fee for the co-op permit is $500. True or false? Mexico says false. Bangladesh says false. Yeah, Miriam, you are correct. It is false. The application fee there's no application fee for the co-op work permit. I have a theory, which is not, I have tested it, but other advisors may not agree. So generally speaking, when you do not pay for something, there is a possibility there will be a longer delay for that application, right? So the co-op work permit takes a long time to process. So if you have a co-op coming up next semester, then this will be the right time to make an application for the co-op work permit, okay? So do not wait onto this one. I have seen many students missing out their co-op because they did not have a permit. And if you are finding yourself in this situation, then connect with us.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, now let's daydream and let's go forward, and thinking that you are graduating from your program, and see how the postgrad work permit would look like, and what's the criteria. First thing first, postgrad work permit, as it carries the name, is after graduation. Sometimes I have students asking that I'm in level 3. Can I apply for postgrad work permit? So the answer is no. You need to finish your program first. And sometimes the student changes program, and that is fine. But please have in mind, postgrad work permit would be based on the program that you complete, and how you are completing that program would lead to a successful postgrad work permit or not. And so if you want to stay in Canada after graduation, apply for postgrad work permit, you need to meet the eligibility. One is, you attending Memorial University as a DLI, so you're already checking that box. But then your program must be a minimum of 8 months. And the duration of postgrad work permit depends on the length of your studies. Basically, better to say the length of your program. So if you studied 2 years or more, you can expect up to 3 years of work permit. And if you, let's say graduate studies that don't have scheduled break, if you had a length of the program of 18 months and more, then you can expect 3 years of work permit. And if it was less than 2 years, your length of the work permit would be up to the length of studies, basically. And in case it took you, let's say you are enrolled in a 1-year program and it took you 1.5 years to finish it, still the postgrad work permit would be based on that 1 year program length. And you're expected to be a full-time student continuously, other than like schedule break, or as I mentioned, very last term, that is okay to be part-time. So that is another part of the criteria of postgrad work permits. And you're also, and the other thing I think is the leave from studies that we mentioned that could impact postgrad work permits. So that's why we recommend that you keep those authorized leave that you have and so on. And if anybody is in that case in the future, we can talk about it as we mentioned, so you have more information as to what could be the consequence. And must study at least 50% of your program in person. So if your program, we had some inquiries previously that my program is fully online. So just know that, that is not eligible for postgrad work permits. And I'm not talking about COVID exemptions and rules around that. This is just the general rule. And must not, so you must not break the work condition of your study permit. So let's say, you had authorization to work up to 20 hours, and then you went beyond that, you worked more than that. So those are the issues that can impact the postgrad work permit. And as mentioned, if you're unsure about your eligibility of postgrad work permits, you can reach out to us. We have information sessions. I always say, please attend information sessions, because we go through all the details and then come up with questions, because when you come with a question, then you may not know all the aspects of it. Then I assure you that it's gonna even make you more confused. So please attend the information session, get the information, and then if there is something that is still not clear to your own personal case, then please book an appointment and we would be able to assist you. And yes, sure. Yeah, we can go for the quiz. Oh, these two, I just wanted to mention, but on the quiz, we can assess if anybody knows already about if open work permit and the other pieces. Maybe Arif can explain.
Okay, so the quiz as starts. Firstly, post-graduation work permit is an open work permit. True or false? False. Mexico says false. Bangladesh is true. First goal for Bangladesh. Okay, congratulations. Obviously, my excitement was too much. I was born in Bangladesh, so super proud. Post-graduation work permit is an open work permit. Now, what is the difference between an open work permit and a closed work permit? I mean, there's no closed work permit. It says employer-specific work permit. So open work permit allows you to work for any employer, and closed work permit or employer-specific work permit only allows you to work for a specific employer. So that is the difference. So with open work permit, you can switch your job without taking any additional permission from the government. But if you are an employer-specific work permit, if you're changing your jobs, then you will need to get another work permit before you can start that new job. And post-graduation work permit is an open work permit. You, in fact, will not also need an employment offer of employment to apply for the post-graduation work permit, but offer of employment helps for these students who have families. Okay, and those are in details. We can have a chat, as Pani said during our PGWP session. Second one, please mute yourself. This is not the. Please mute yourself. Can mute them, right? I can mute them. Oh, I know I can mute them. Okay, done. Next one is post-graduation work permit is an one-time opportunity only. Mexico says true. Yes, it's true. Post-graduation work permit is a one-time opportunity only. So once you use this opportunity, you cannot apply it for again. Only time post-graduation work permit can be extended if you did not get the full-length PGWP because your passport validity. Because PGWP cannot go beyond of your passport, and if you did not get the full-length PGWP because of your passport validity, once you renew your passport, you can extend PGWP. Otherwise, that's it. There is no other otherwise actually. Last one, to obtain PGWP, students must be continuously full-time student except during their scheduled break and last semester of studies. True or false? True. Yeah, it's true. I believe it was Ghana who responded to this one. So excellent. So PGWP, you have to be continuously full-time student except during your scheduled break and last semester of studies. For graduate students, there is no scheduled break. So you have to be continuously a full-time student. And the last semester of studies does not apply to graduate students. It is only for undergraduates. Yeah. Now I might pass it on to Panis or Natasha.
It's me.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, so we all know that with access to internet and all the information that is readily accessible to all of us, sometimes we get information overload, and so we have seen and come across with scenarios that students obtain information from random websites or ask friends and even friends at other school, and so please be mindful that the source of information for immigration policies you would like to always use is the Immigration Canada's website. So the first one, cic.gc.ca, is the website you want to refer to for the policies. And please don't ask friends for advice, even other schools, a lot of friends at other schools, because as Natasha mentioned, the definition of full-time, part-time, completing program, all of those stuff, it varies from school to another. So please be mindful about that. And about licensed immigration advisors. So as Natasha mentioned at the beginning, and we introduce ourselves as licensed immigration advisors, because it is illegal to provide immigration advice in Canada without having proper licenses. So you can find our names if you go to CICC. This is our regulatory body, and you will find our names over there. And also in the future, let's say for other permits that it is outside the scope of our practices and our license, maybe you want to talk to immigration consultants. That way you can find their name and making sure they are in good standing and in fact regulated with this body, that you can reach out and basically hire those consultants if you wish. And us, the immigration advising team, Arif, Natasha, Panis, and you can reach out to us for clarification on immigration policies as it pertains to international student status, such as visa, study permit, postgrad work permits. And can we go? Okay. Arif?
True and false. Now, Now, there is this whole concept about everybody is a winner, but if you don't win, you are not a winner. It's a joke. Everybody is a winner. Try your best to take this. Maybe let's put more weight to this competition. So if you win this, then you take the IIT New International Student Immigration Information Session Trophy. Such a huge title for a trophy, but let's make it happen, okay? So, and don't get a red card, or there's no red card. Don't get a blue card, okay? So, my friends and family are the best source of information when it comes to immigration. True or false? False! And it goes to Greenland, 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 Greenland. It's false. Unless, of course, they're immigration lawyer or they are immigration consultant, then they are not the best source of information when it comes to immigration, okay? So I'm Joanna from Greenland, takes I guess the first point, and most likely takes the co-shares the trophy because there's only 2 questions. It is illegal to provide immigration advice without having appropriate license and authorization. Nigeria, Omar answered it first. So that it is illegal to provide immigration advice without having appropriate license and authorization. It is true. If you don't have that, for example, sometimes you hear something from us and then you go and advise your friend, like, on this, it's illegal. Don't do that. If you do not have license, you do not know, or you didn't do the studies on this, then please don't do that. It has impact on you and also to the person that you're advising. Okay. So the trophy goes to Greenland. Congratulations, Greenland. And I hope to see you on campus.
Thank you. So talking about us, immigration advising team and the immigration support that they provide, here is the list. So you can book an appointment for one-on-one consultation. You need to do that through Navigate. So download the Navigate for students in the App Store. And if you cannot book the appointment in Navigate, you can book it through My Life. And the other way is our drop-in virtual sessions, and this information and the appropriate link, it is provided on the Internationalization Office website under Student tab. And Wednesdays, from this semester, September to December, I have the drop-in session on Wednesday, 11 to 1, and Natasha will do Friday, 11 to 1. So just to highlight, this is a virtual session, drop-in, meaning that when you join the WebEx, maybe you have to wait a bit because maybe I'm with other students. Once I'm done with the student, I will let you in. It is a drop-in session. And the other way is, of course, attending information session. As we mentioned, we have various topics. It is posted, which that basically each week, what is the topic on Tuesday, Thursdays at 12 p.m. Newfoundland time. And you can email us at immigrationadvising@mun.ca. However, with emails, please have that in mind that if your case has lots of details or it is complicated, not necessarily email would be the best way. And you need to book an appointment so we have a proper conversation. And as you have already realized through all these slides, immigration has lots of details and each case could be different. That's what excites us. Thank you.
Welcome to the Q&A session. So you can pose your question in the chat box and we will take it as in the order it comes. But also one thing that I will request you that, I have just shared a link that which will give you access to provide us feedback. So I'll really appreciate if you could take time and provide feedback to us. by clicking on the link. So you can put your question in the chat box, and I will read the questions for advisors, and they will respond to you. So I see the first question: can I apply for express entry while I'm studying in Canada with a study permit? Well, this is a permanent residency